Welcome to the Growing in Love for Life podcast, where it's all about saving and strengthening your marriage and creating the relationship you really deserve and want to have. And now, from growinginloveforlife.com, relationship and marriage coach and best-selling author, your host, Liam Naden.
This is episode 27 of the Growing in Love for Life podcast. And hi everyone, it's Liam Naden back again with a new episode of our Growing in Love for Life podcast. It's great to be here, and I've got some information today that I'm really excited to tell you about. And I've called this episode 4 Questions to Save Your Marriage. Now, it's hard to believe we're actually on to episode 27 of these podcasts. And I hope you've been listening to some of the previous ones. I know a lot of people have listened to all of the podcasts, which is great. And I hope I've been able to give you some ideas and strategies and techniques and things that you can actually apply to your own marriage situation, and which hopefully will make a big difference in helping you to save your marriage, which is obviously what this is all about. But, you know, it struck me the other day, and this is really one of the reasons I came up with the topic for these 4 questions that are going to help you save your marriage. And it struck me, here we are in our 27th episode. And with 27 episodes, you've got in your hands a huge resource. You know, we've covered an awful lot of ground in these podcasts. We've covered everything from how to forgive your spouse for things that they've done wrong or ways they've hurt you, how to create better communication in your marriage, the sorts of things you should do to save your marriage, other things you shouldn't do. We've created there's a big resource here now of information that you can use. And of course, I've also got 2 very powerful relationship programs. One is my 7-day program, Stop Your Divorce, How to Save Your Marriage When Your Spouse Doesn't Want to. And that's a very powerful step-by-step program when your relationship is in a crisis and your spouse wants to leave, or maybe they already have, and you want to stop your divorce. So I really hope you'll check that program out if you're in that situation. Or I've also got my 30-day program, my Save Your Marriage Relationship Transformation program. And this is for people who have really lost their way in their marriage, and maybe their spouse wants to leave as well. But this goes into a lot more depth in how to really rebuild the intimacy, the communication, the passion in your marriage and get things right back on track. So I hope you'll check out those two programs, because they really are the best of my information given to you in a step-by-step plan that's proven to work. It's helped a lot of couples to save their marriage. So check those out. But in these podcasts and in my books as well, if you've read any of those, and just a word about my Kindle books, I'm really proud of them. I've created a series called the Growing in Love for Life series, and many of them have gone on to become bestsellers on Amazon Kindle. But in all of those things, I've really tried to do 2 things. The first thing is to give you, as I said earlier, practical things that you can do immediately that are going to create a noticeable difference straight away to your marriage situation, an improvement. But the other thing is, I'm also trying to give you some ideas to get you thinking in a different way. And actually, I think that's the more important. Because what happens when you get new ideas and new thoughts, and when you start thinking in a different way, you create new behaviors, and that leads to different results. And Einstein has a quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And I think that's so true, and that's why we've got to change our thoughts, change the way we think if we want to get a different result. And I think, just to digress a little bit, but what we're seeing today is a big shift in the way people are being helped to deal with their problems in their life. And that comes down to relationships and marriage coaching as well. And I think this is going to be a much greater shift in the future, but it's effective, and it's very effective, because what it actually does is it's a shift away from just simply giving people the answers to actually giving people the right questions and helping them to come up with the answers that are right for them. Now, this isn't to say that you don't need to know the right things to do. You do need the answers, but you also need to know how to ask the right questions. And that's what we're going to do in this podcast as well, is help you create some more of the right questions and come up with better answers and better solutions. Alright, so that brings me to today's topic, which is really about asking the right questions. And I've got 4 questions for you. And they are 4 questions that really have the potential and power to help you save your marriage. And just a quick word about these questions. Obviously, as I've said in so many of my podcasts, when I ask you a question, the key is that it's vital that you answer these questions honestly. I mean, at the end of the day, they're only for your benefit anyway. But if you do commit to answering them honestly, and particularly the 4 questions I'm going to cover today, you may well find all sorts of feelings come up for you. And there might be things that are not very pleasant. You might start to feel guilty, or regret, or anger, or sadness. And above all, you might even feel some anxiety and even some fear. Now, if that happens, you can actually be really pleased and take heart, because it not only means you're on the right track, but it also means that you're going to be much closer to resolving your marriage situation than otherwise. Because you're going to come up with some powerful answers, and you're going to experience that shift in your thinking that I was talking about earlier. And that's really what's going to make the difference. So because of that, you also might want to make a few notes of as we go along with these questions. Write down your answers, and you might even want to pause the audio as well. Give yourself some time. It's really important that you give yourself some time to answer these questions. Alright, well, I hope I have, now that I've mentioned that sort of warning, if you like, I hope I haven't scared you off. No, really, this is a very exciting process, and I think you'll be very glad you went through and answered these 4 questions. So let's get on to those questions now, and they're actually all why questions. They're all questions that start with why. And I think why questions are really the most powerful types of questions that we can ask, because they really deal with the underlying reasons behind things. And this is when you get to the heart of things, and you get to really understand what's going on in a situation. And it's really only by understanding what's going on in a situation and addressing things honestly that you can start to do some of the things that are really going to work, that are going to make the real difference. Alright, so let's get on to the first question, and just as a way of introducing this question, I just want to fill you in on a little bit of my own personal story. Now, you might have heard a bit about me or read a little bit about me and how I came to be working in this whole relationship coaching area, and how I managed, to be perfectly honest, to get such very effective results, which is great. And it really comes back to what happened to me. And it wasn't so long ago I was going through my second divorce. Yes, I was not good at marriage, right? Perfect candidate to be teaching it. But anyway, things were really messy. I'd lost everything, and I mean everything. I was living on my mother's sofa at the time, sleeping in her living room. I'd lost everything I had, my friends, my businesses, my income, all my possessions. And not only that, I was in court with both of my ex-wives at the same time. They were both having me in court and trying to, attack me, as it were. So when all this was going on, and I'm sure you'd agree, I wasn't exactly feeling good, but I asked myself a very good question. And that's the first of the 4 questions that I want you to ask for yourself today. And that is, why am I in this situation? So really think about that for yourself. Why are you in the situation you're in with your marriage? If your spouse wants to leave, why do they want to leave? Why has the intimacy gone from your marriage? Why are you having these problems? Why are you in this situation? Now, if you're really honest with yourself, and I hope you are, you realize that a lot of your current situation, if not all of it, has to do with decisions that you have made and things that actually are within your control. So they're things that you've done or things that you've not done. Things that maybe you've ignored when you shouldn't have. Maybe you've seen some warning signs and you've just chosen to ignore them. Maybe there are some things that you should have said, but you didn't say them. You just kept them inside. But whatever the reasons, it's about realizing that you actually do have some responsibility for the situation you're in. And maybe if your husband or wife is having an affair or they want to leave you, it's not just about what they've done or are doing. Really ask yourself that question: why am I in the situation that I'm in? And when you ask that question and you really accept that you have some responsibility for where you are, that's a wonderful place to be, because it puts you in a position of power. So instead of feeling helpless and powerless, now you know you can do something about it. So that's the very first question to ask yourself: why am I in this situation? Really powerful. Think about that one. Right, the second question, and again this I think is a very profound question to ask yourself: why do I want to save my marriage? That's a big question. Why do I want to save my marriage? And this is often the very first question I ask people when they come to me and ask for help. I say, why do you want to save your marriage? And this means you really need to search very deeply into yourself to uncover the real reasons for why you want to save your marriage. In fact, I've covered this whole thing in a previous podcast. But don't just say, well, it's because I love them and I want to be with them. That's the first reaction. But no, that's not, I don't believe, the real reason, is it? I mean, you can still love your husband or your wife and not be married to them. And if you say, well, I want to be with them, but, well, if they're making you miserable, then why would you want to be with them anyway? Right, now I'm not saying here that you should leave your marriage, but I'm saying you've got to answer this question: why do I really want to save my marriage? Now, one way to help come up with the real answers to this is to ask yourself another question, which is, what am I afraid will happen if my marriage ends? What am I afraid of? What am I afraid will happen if my marriage ends? And very often people want to save their marriage because they're afraid of what they think is going to happen if they're not married. They're afraid of things like how they're going to make a living or maintain their lifestyle. They're afraid of the potential impact on their children, or whether they're going to be even more unhappy than they are now. And all of these fears, what are they afraid of that will happen if their marriage ends? All of these fears really come down to a fear of the unknown, a fear of the future, not knowing what's going to happen. And the problem with that is it keeps people stuck. And one of the things we call this place is a comfort zone. And a comfort zone doesn't need to be comfortable. It can be absolutely horrible. But it will be comfortable because at least you know what it looks and feels like. So a lot of people want to save their marriage because they think, well, at least I know it's miserable, but at least I know where I am. I'm not having to step out into the wide world of the unknown. So ask yourself that question. You need to come up with the real reasons why you want to save your marriage. And then you need to look at them and you need to say, are these really the right reasons to stay married? And really, if I do stay married, am I going to be able to be happy? Now, hopefully, of course, the answer is yes, but you need to be really honest about it. And unless you are, and I'm sure you can see by now that unless you are really honest with these questions, you're really not going to be able to save your marriage anyway. All right, so that's question number 2. Question number 3, why am I allowing my current situation to continue? In other words, why am I putting up with this? Why am I putting up with the current situation and allowing myself and probably my spouse and my children to remain unhappy? Now, if you've answered the previous 2 questions honestly with yourself, if you've been honest with yourself, and if you've given them a lot of thought, then you're probably already getting some new ideas on things that you could be doing differently, things that are probably going to make a positive difference. In that case, you really need to ask yourself, why am I allowing my current situation to continue? Why am I, if I know some things I should be doing, but I'm not doing them, why is that? Why am I just allowing things to continue the way they are? Because the truth is you are allowing it to. You might think that it's out of your control, but remember the previous 2 questions. By now you'll realize things are very much in your control. And you have a responsibility. So if you're just allowing if you're not changing anything, you simply are allowing your current situation to continue. And of course, when you think about the answers, what might come into your head, what's going to surface again when you really think about it are your fears, isn't it? Isn't it true that there are things that you fear that are stopping you from taking actions, from doing things that you know you should, or even not doing things that you know you shouldn't, but you're not doing them? But just becoming aware of these things is going to make a big difference. So ask yourself that question: why am I allowing my current situation to continue? Even though I know there are some things that I could be doing differently that would make a difference. You know, Bob Proctor, the well-known speaker, he says, our problem is not knowing what to do. Our problem is not knowing why we're not doing it. That's very profound, isn't it? Really think about that. Our problem is not knowing what to do. Maybe you've already got some ideas on what to do, some new ideas. But our problem is not knowing why we're not doing it. And it really comes down to our fears. So think about the fears behind your answers when you answer that question: why am I just allowing my current situation to continue? And realize that you are. All right, well, the fourth and last question, and this is a biggie, and this question is: why am I not doing everything I can to save my marriage? Now, your first reaction when you hear that question might be, but I am doing everything I can. I'm working really hard. I'm reading everything I can. I'm doing all these things. I'm trying to make my husband or wife feel really good. I'm putting myself out. I'm spending all my time thinking about it. I'm really trying to figure out what to do. I'm talking to other people. I'm doing everything I can. But the truth is, if you're really honest with yourself, you're not doing everything, are you? You know, there's a story about Jay Abraham, the marketing guru, and people would say to him that they were doing everything they could to create a particular result. And he'd say, all right, well, don't tell me everything, but just tell me the first 100 things you're doing to get the result you want. And of course, people would sort of stop for a moment, and they might start to, say a few things. They normally get to about 10, and of course, that'd be it. No, you're not doing everything you can to save your marriage, are you? So you need to ask yourself, why aren't you doing everything you can? I mean, there are so many things you could be doing that you're not doing. I mean, for a start, you could listen to every single episode of my podcast. As I said, there's 27 of them now. There's a huge resource there. You could listen to all of those. That's one thing you could do. I've also got 2 very powerful coaching programs that have been proven to save marriages, that are going to show you exactly what to do to save your marriage. You could do that. And I've also, there's other information you can find elsewhere as well. You're not doing everything, are you? That's the truth. So why aren't you? And let's look at this for a moment, because, and I'm being brutally honest here, but I am about being honest, because I want you to get the result you're looking for, and you're only going to get it if you're honest with yourself and I'm honest with you. So a lot of people contact me, or some people contact me, and they say, look, I'm really desperate to save my marriage. And I'll do anything, I really will, and I'd love to do your program, but, and then the excuse comes along. And often it might be, but I don't have the time to do it. Oh, really? Okay, well, try and find the time for a divorce, because that's going to take a lot of your time. All right, but you know what I mean. Or they say they can't afford it, it's too expensive. Well, for a start, to be honest, those programs are not expensive. They also come with a guarantee. And there's one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty, and that's the most expensive thing you'll ever do in your life is go through a divorce. I can guarantee you that. So it's going to cost you far more than you can imagine to get a divorce, and it's going to cost you many, many times the cost of the program to show you exactly how to avoid it. So you need to ask yourself that question: why am I not doing everything I can to save my marriage? And when you really ask yourself that question, you're going to come up with some pretty interesting answers. And again, very likely what's going to come up are your fears. Perhaps you've thought of doing something, but you think, well, no, it's not going to work, or you don't necessarily think it won't work, but you're not sure that it will work. So you think you're going to be wasting your money. Or you might think your spouse might be angry with you for having tried something and it been a failure. So it's that fear of failure with you, if you like. Or they might even criticize you for trying, and that's what some people say to me. Well, I can't do this program because if my spouse finds out, they're going to be really angry. And I say, well, the alternative is you get divorced and it won't really matter, will it? So is that really a big issue? Or maybe some people also have a fear that it's going to make things worse. But again, how much worse is it have to get, is it really going to matter how much if it gets a lot worse? There's nothing worse than divorce, is there? Now, the truth is, of course, you don't have to try everything to save your marriage. You only need to do what works. But you have to be prepared to try everything until you find the thing that works for you. And that might be after 10 things, trying 10 things, and then you find the thing that works. It might be after 100 things. But you have to be prepared to do anything, to keep going until you find what it is that gives you the result that you want. So ask yourself that question. That's the fourth question. Why am I not doing everything I can to save your marriage? Ask that question. Why am I not doing everything I can to save my marriage? Okay, well, they're 4 very powerful questions, and I really have found in working with people and through my programs and through coaching that they're questions that really have the potential to massively change your results in terms of saving your marriage. So please spend time thinking about them and really be honest with yourself as well. Because when you're honest with yourself, what happens is you come up with the right answers. And that's all that matters, is the right answers. And you'll start to see the things that you're afraid of that are stopping you from doing the right things. And that's really, really important. So there are 4 very powerful questions that are really worth spending some time on. Now, I mentioned earlier about my 2 programs, and I do just want to remind you that there's something that I feel very passionate about, because I've seen the impact the ideas of my programs really do in helping people save their marriage. And one of the most fulfilling things in my life is seeing 2 people who have got a great relationship, when it turns sour, not throwing it away, realizing that just a few things that you do differently can bring you back together again, can bring back the magic that you used to have. And it really is a privilege to be able to show people just those little things that make a massive difference. So I really would encourage you, if you like the things that I'm saying to you in these podcasts and you feel that I can help you, have a look at my 2 programs, my Stop Your Divorce program and my Save Your Marriage Relationship Transformation program. And all the information is available on my website, liamnaden.com, as well as other information as well. So thanks very much for joining me again on this podcast episode. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to email me at liamnaden@gmail.com. Otherwise, I look forward to helping you soon and talking to you soon. Thanks again, and bye for now.